So apparently I hate this camera. Roll the intro. Hey everyone, and welcome to the video, and today we're taking an updated look at the Insta360 Go 2. Insta360 have reached out to me with some answers and also some questions with regards to the videos that I posted. So in this video we're going to go through those and hopefully come up with a few solutions for some of the things that I actually raised. Okay, so coming on to the email that Insta360 actually sent me. So they've watched the YouTube video that I posted. It doesn't say which one they've actually watched, because obviously I did have the initial longer video and then I posted an updated video where I'd already kind of figured out a few things thanks to some comments, thanks to other YouTubers, Philip Bloom in particular, thank you very much, and also just figuring out that some of it was potentially just user error in how I was making use of it. But what we'll do is they've replied back with 5 key things and we'll go through each one individually. So the first one of those was battery life, and what they've sent is, here you mentioned the camera only record for 3 to 5 minutes and then dies out. To locate the problem, may you provide us with the details? May I know which video mode you were using, if the camera was fully charged, and what the shooting time you set for the camera. So battery life was the first thing that they reached out with regards to, and the 2 questions that they were asking was firstly what mode I was using, and secondly whether the battery was fully charged before I actually started making those recordings. So the issue that I raised was the fact that randomly sometimes it'd record up to 14 minutes with pro mode, and sometimes it would literally randomly just shut down maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Whenever I've made any of those videos, firstly, the camera was always fully charged, because what I try to do is before I start any recording, I'll always make sure that the camera is on 100%. And the way you do that is you open it, you hit connect, and then whenever any mode comes up, if you just hit the button again, just on the top right, just there, it gives you the percentage of the camera itself, not the case. So in order to check the case battery level, on the right hand side there's 3 dots, which I'm guessing is the sort of Wi-Fi signal strength, and then there has a battery icon, and the battery icon generally just goes down, I think it's in 3 or maybe 2 or 3 increments, but generally the case is always fully charged and the camera itself is always on 100%. The case and the camera are both fully charged. It'll randomly, whenever it's being used with the pendant outside of the case. So firstly, inside of the case, I have no issues with battery life. The battery lasts way longer than the camera can actually record for. So if it's in the case, you're going to get the full 27.8 gigabytes worth of video before it will actually stop recording, which I believe I've used this for some of my YouTube videos, and as a B cam or a C cam, and it did over 30 minutes. So that's perfectly fine, but it's outside of the case, and generally I only use pro mode. As I mentioned, pro mode is the one that I would recommend most people use because it gives you the most flexibility in post. Right, the second one that sort of area that they've questioned about was the HDR video. So I did mention that I've had some pixelation or artifacts coming up in the HDR videos that I've been shooting. Now, to be fair, I didn't use it a lot, and whenever I have used it, generally it's only been for very short clips. And what I tend to find is whenever I start the HDR video, what I'll do is I'll start a HDR video now. And generally what I find is whenever at the start of the video, whenever I've moved the camera quickly, I'll get some sort of red, green, blue pixels flash up in certain areas of the video, and that's put me off straight away. So it kind of put me off using HDR mode altogether. But hopefully I've made a quick video there, so we might have some test footage to actually go over. To be perfectly honest, with the HDR bug, because generally I'm going to shoot in pro mode anyway, it's not too much of an issue for me. But for people that do want to use it primarily in HDR mode, that might be a bigger issue. But as I said, I can't always replicate it, but if I can, then what I will do is I'll insert a clip, so then we have a record of what it actually does. Right, so this is where things got a little bit better in terms of Insta360 reaching out to me, and this is why I make the videos that I make on all the products that basically I review on my channel. So Insta360 reached out regarding the tripod legs. So obviously I've highlighted 2 separate issues. The fact that these little tabs just on the end of the sort of bunny ears or the tripod legs, they could potentially break off over time, and also the legs themselves could also break off, as somebody mentioned in the comments. Now, what Insta360 have confirmed is that the legs are replaceable. I have gone back to them with a question as to whether that would come under a sort of initial warranty repair or whether it would be an additional cost, and if it is an additional cost, how much we would be looking at paying. Because obviously if I think the lenses, they already have replacement lenses and they're quite reasonable. So I believe you can buy 2 lenses for, I think it's £10. So that's not a terrible price, and similar thing with the pendant as well. So if you wanted a second pendant, I think that's only about £5 as well. So that, considering most sort of first party accessories generally are quite expensive, I thought that was quite reasonable. So I'm hoping it'll be a similar thing where it's only a couple of quid, and that will just put everybody's mind at ease, and it means that over time, if they do break off, you know you can just replace them. Right, so coming on to keyframes. So this is where they've replied back. For the time being, the Studio doesn't, Studio being the desktop app, doesn't support adding keyframes. Sorry to disappoint you, but we have already reported your feedback to the R&D group for further evaluation and development. Now, I've had sort of conflicting reports. Philip Bloom did confirm that Insta360 were already working on bringing all the features from the mobile side to the desktop side, but this kind of suggests that it's not quite that far along, and possibly we may be waiting a little longer. Ultimately, as long as we get those features, it means more flexibility for everybody out there who are using this particular camera, but as long as they're aware of it and they're listening, then that's justification for making these videos. Okay, and coming on to the last thing that they actually mentioned, and they actually put it down as key point 6, but obviously it's only 5, and that is the discharging when left overnight. So what they've said, I'll read out what they've actually sent me. So normally the charging case will stop charging the camera after 1 hour of charging. If we don't open the charging case, it will automatically charge the camera after 7 days. So for example, I shut the case whilst it's charging. After 1 hour, it will stop. It will go into standby. So for whatever reason, if the camera hasn't fully charged, then it will just remain at whatever percentage that was. After 7 days of leaving this closed and just completely off, it will then do a top up, thinking that maybe after 7 days, it may have, the battery may have depleted a little and it may need a top up. But I'm guessing it's still going to be that same thing. So it will be maybe a 1 hour maximum, and then obviously it will then shut down again. The wording of the email isn't great, but I'll do my best. So we tested it, it dropped around 5% in a week. It sounds strange according to your description, but it's possible that the consumption reaches this if we accidentally open the app and wake up the camera. Would you please have a check, or may turn off the Wi-Fi in the charging case and give it a test? Okay, so the wording of the email isn't great, but the general gist of the next 2 paragraphs is that there's 2 things that they're sort of touching on, and one is that possibly if you're opening the app, it's trying to connect to the camera, and that is then forcing it to wake up. In my experience, that's not the case, because it will only connect to the app if the case is open. I've never been able to connect to the camera whilst the case has been closed, so I don't think that would be a factor. The other thing is turning off the Wi-Fi within the case. So I'm not sure whether that means going into the settings and turning it off from there. So if you know you're not going to be using it for a long time, what they'd probably like you to do is change the Wi-Fi from auto. Well, actually no, because the only 2 options that the case gives you is auto and on. It doesn't give you an option to actually switch the Wi-Fi off. And this is something that I remember seeing a while back, thinking that maybe that would actually lead to better battery life if it wasn't actually emitting a Wi-Fi signal, but there doesn't appear to be an option to turn the Wi-Fi off. There's only an option to set it to on permanently or set it to auto, and I'm guessing the auto is the part that it's meant to switch it off automatically. But like I say, I've not been able to get this to connect to the phone whilst it's been closed. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do a test right now, and usually whenever I'm using the app, what I'll also do is I'll kill the app in the background, and you get a little haptic vibration from the camera. So if I go to connect now, let's just see if it does anything. Usually at this stage it will give us a sort of join. So if we hit join, Okay, no. So yeah, I was wrong on that. So it is possible to connect to the camera whilst it's closed, and it's been closed as well. But what should happen is if I kill the app, that should then be disconnected. Previously, I've never actually tried that. I've only ever tried connecting it while it's been open. And what I also do is whenever I've used it, right now it's obviously turned on. What I will do is I will hold the mode button and that turns it off. And what you should get, if the camera isn't fully charged, it will go into charging mode. At the moment, obviously, because it's fully charged, it's not actually showing a charging light on it. But if it wasn't, then it would just put it back into charging mode. So that's something that is possible. You can connect to the camera even when it's fully closed, but it's not something that I've done. So that's not something that would have been the reason for the battery drain. So that's something that maybe they can just adjust in the firmware. As I've said, there are a lot of these sort of bugs. There are things that they can possibly improve and adjust in the firmware, and obviously make the product better as we go along. And that's basically the main thing. I just want to get this to the point where the camera itself is brilliant in terms of how you can use it, but the user experience wasn't great for me, because I generally want to record longer videos. And for people that are just making short clips, you can then again manage, but that word manage is something that isn't very good when it comes to a user experience. You want to make that better. You want to make it so then it's workable, even workable. I'd say it's a negative sort of connotation in terms of you're making do, rather than trying to improve it and make it a really good experience. Because everything else about it, as I've said, the video quality for what it is really good. It's just those little things that if they improve them, I think it'll make it even better. Now, what I did also do was I sent them a few questions as well. So what I'll do is I'll just come down to the few points that I've actually raised. Okay, so the first one was about the USB-C port. So you can't charge this with a USB-C to USB-C cable. It has to be a USB-A to USB-C. So this has a USB-C port on it, but you can't charge directly off a USB-C port. Similarly, you can't transfer from USB-C to USB-C. So that's something that I've asked, whether that is something that is software and firmware based, something that they can adapt and improve in an updated firmware, or whether that is a hardware limitation. More than likely it probably is a hardware limitation, but if it is, then obviously that way at least we know what it is and why that's the case. Possibly it's just to try and save battery, dissipate heat, just keep that heat under control by limiting the transfer speed. If that's the case, then that's fair enough, because I think that's probably the same reason why, even though there's an option in the settings that mentions H.264, I can't imagine a device this small being able to record in H.265, because it would generate even more heat and it would use even more battery. So I understand why that limitation is in there. If we can just get some clarification on the USB-C port, then it puts our mind to ease and we know that that's the reason why. Okay, and the other thing that I mentioned was the extra video that's recorded every single time you use Pro mode. So whenever you use Pro video mode, it records two clips. So it records one smaller resolution, much smaller file, and then it records the actual file, which is 2560 by 2560, I believe. The smaller one, I'm not sure what resolution it is, because it doesn't actually give you that information when you pull up the details pane on the MacBook Pro, but it's smaller. You can tell it's lower resolution and the file size is much smaller. So I uploaded a video on how to do keyframes, and the test video for that particular clip was 148 megabytes for the actual clip, and the smaller video was 21 megabytes. So that tells you that it's much smaller, but it's still space that is being used for an extra clip. Hey everyone, so what we have here is we've got the Insta360 connected to my MacBook Pro. I'll show the actual setup of it probably in a different video or in a different clip, but in this, what I'm going to do is we'll just come into the camera, and basically this is one of the things that I was trying to highlight in some of my other videos. So what we have here is just a short clip that I did for a test video. It should already be up on the channel. If not, it'll be getting uploaded soon. The idea behind that video was just to show you how to do keyframes on the iPhone. But whilst I have this short clip recorded, I thought it would be a good way to actually show you the difference between the desktop and the iPhone app. So this is one of the things that I was actually highlighting, the fact that essentially you get two videos recorded whenever you're using Pro mode. So that's a sort of preview, small kind of recording, and then as you can see, this is a much bigger higher res image. So if we just come into the settings for that one, I'm not sure if it'll show me. Doesn't look like it will, but I mean, you could tell from the file size. Obviously this is a very short clip, so it's 148 megabytes on the bigger file. And if we just check the smaller file, as you can see, it's only 21 megabytes. So I think, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I think what it is this is probably used by the app whenever you're doing previews and you're editing, and then the actual edits are actually done on this file. But whenever you're making any type of Pro videos, you're getting two lots of video every single time. And basically I have reached out into Insta360 and asked them whether it's possible through a firmware update somewhere down the line, for those that only want to do a desktop transfer, so to a PC or Mac, whether it's an option to turn off this file, the smaller file, and just have the bigger file recording, because I don't need this smaller file when I'm transferring to a desktop. And obviously, even though it's not a massive file, so it's only 21 megabytes, it's still using more battery power, as well as obviously a little bit more memory to actually record it. But that's 21, this one is 100, so it's still a percentage of the actual total memory, and any more memory that we can eke out of it, especially to do the longer videos, obviously the better it is. Now my guess is that is what you actually look at when you're editing on the mobile. So they're using a much smaller resolution file, so then you can both keep heat down as well as edit a little bit faster, and then all the changes that you want to make are then exported using the actual file. What I've asked them is whether there can be an option for those that only use desktop export. I don't need the mobile functionality, so I don't need it recording that extra file because I'm not going to be using it. So I've asked them whether there's a possibility in a future firmware update where we can disable that in the settings, so then it only records the main file as it does with standard, and I believe it also does that with HDR as well. I'll add in some description below on this video, or just a line of text if HDR video also does that. Hey everyone, so yes, this is just a sort of insert. So this is the HDR video that I just recorded, and as you can see, it still records those two. Let me just turn the volume down so you can hear me. So as you can see, it still records two different versions. So that's the normal version and this is the smaller version. So if we just check both of their file sizes, we can see that the normal version is 191 megabytes and the smaller version is 21 megabytes. So just between those two videos, these are just short clips. These are less than probably 20 seconds each, and you're talking 40 megabytes for both of them, between this one and this one. And essentially what it's doing is every single time you're making any video that's not in standard mode. So standard mode is the only one that I've found where it will record just in whatever format you choose, so 16:9, 9:16 or 1:1, and it will just record that one video. Obviously you lose the flow state stabilization as well as the ability to edit it in post. But this is something that I believe they could save on this. If you're doing desktop transfers, then we don't need these small files. There's no need for these to be recorded, and you can basically use that space to get more recording. And if we can get rid of that, it's not much, but it might give you maybe a minute or two extra video. And if it's inside the case and you're getting, I don't know, 30 minutes, or if it's outside of the case and you're getting however long, it just gives you a little bit more recording time. And it's more so when you're doing short clips, because all of those individual short clips could be a clip of their own. So obviously if you're doing one long cut, you've got just two files. One's very long and the higher resolution, and one's the same length but it's a lower resolution. It will still be taking up space, so that's still extra space that we could put towards just more recordings. So that was the other thing that I actually went back to them. Okay, and just to further make my point, what we have here is we have the Insta360 Studio app, and we have the 4 files. So this is, if I just click off there, so this is the small file, this is the actual file, this is the small file again, and this is the actual file. Now watch what happens when I drag all 4 of these into the Studio app. It will only import 2 of them. It doesn't actually import the smaller files. So that's why I say if we're using desktop transfer, then we don't need these extra files, and that's just in 28 seconds, so not even 30 seconds worth of footage. We have 2 sorry, no, because how long is this one? This one's 18. So what, 32? So in 32 seconds of video, we've used an extra 40 megabytes. So that's extra space that we don't need. We don't need to be recording that video if we're doing the desktop transfer. But yeah, that's my update on the Insta360. The more I use it, obviously the more I'm kind of getting used to the limitations, and generally what I find is, even though the iPhone app is better to edit on in terms of allowing you to do keyframes, it doesn't really work with my workflow in terms of me wanting to import it whenever I'm doing these kind of videos. For any general videos around the house, when I've given it to my daughter, my son, anybody, and they're just doing recordings, for those I don't necessarily need to import it into Final Cut Pro. So for those it's fine, I can just export it to the mobile, but it's the time that it takes to transfer. And I believe I have also done a video where I actually show how long a transfer takes, not of a full 27 gig, because that would just be there forever. I think it was roughly around a 4-minute clip that I did a test video on. So I did a screen recording of sending that to my phone and then just exporting that straight without any edits, just the exact same video as what is recorded in 16:9 aspect ratio, just exporting that to the camera roll, and I did a screen recording of that as well. So I'll put that in a separate video because once again, this video has gone on for quite a long time. That's the 2 things, the battery life and the transfer times. They're the 2 biggest kind of hurdles with this. Contrary to what most people think, because of the titles of the videos and the length and the amount of nitpick issues that I raised, if you like, I don't dislike this camera, and I don't think it's a bad product. As I've said time and time again, I think it's a good product, but it just has a lot of issues, and a lot of those issues can be resolved. So it doesn't make sense not to raise them, because if you can get a better product simply by raising those issues and Insta360 respond and improve their product, it's a win for everybody. So that's my take. A lot of people may be put off buying the camera because of those issues. Some people, it won't affect them. If you're making short clips and you're transferring them regularly, you won't be affected by those issues, especially if you leave it inside the case, because generally your battery life inside the case is quite good. It's only from those initial videos where people made it seem like this was the perfect camera, if you like, and they made it seem like there were no downsides to it and it didn't have any weaknesses, and that was kind of, I think, not necessarily misleading, but it was a little disingenuous in the sense that it didn't paint a fair picture. So it didn't give you, the real end user, it didn't give them an idea of what it's actually like to use. And the thing is, with smartphone photography and things like that, because it is so easy to shoot, edit and export all on the device, it means that we've all kind of got used to this level of ease. And whilst this gives much more flexibility in terms of what you can do with the footage, it can still be better, which is why I make these videos. So hopefully, working alongside Insta360, we all win as a result of this. Anyway, that's it for this video. What we'll do is, when Insta360 do come back to me, I will do another update video with whatever answers they've given. I still need to provide them with some sort of test footage and everything as well, so I'll try and upload those to the channel as well as obviously provide them. And when they come back to me with any possible firmware updates or any new features, anything like that, I'll make an updated video at that point as well. But in order to get those updates, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel and also hit that bell icon, and also make sure that you have notifications turned on your phone, otherwise you won't actually get that notification. I'd really appreciate if you also gave this video a thumbs up, and other than that, thanks very much for watching.